Okay, welcome to Clark Construction Services Homework Help once again. In here we're going to talk about structures and mostly pile driving and our approach to payment on pile driving. Alright, so let's look at our concrete production pile. We have different types, production or test pile, concrete or steel that we'll be dealing with. And some of them are a little bit different and some of them are similar. Now, we're always going to pay the authorized length, which is whatever the district geotechnical engineer authorizes as a result of the test piles. That's the purpose of the test piles, to determine what our authorized length is going to be. And we're always going to pay that unless the contractor brings in something different. If he brings in less than what the authorized length is, then we're only going to pay him what he brought in. So in this exercise, the first one, the actual pile delivered was 125 feet, so we're going to pay 125, just what the authorized length is. We didn't preform anything. Preform is drilling into the ground and preforming a hole so that we can drive. So it's 0, and we have 4 set checks. Now the first 2 are free within 1 working day, so we'd pay an additional 10 feet for each set check that occurred. Redrive, we had 1 redrive, so we'll pay 20 feet. The splice length, in this instance, we had to drive it further than what the authorized length was, so we're going to pay for a splice, 30 feet. The material and the labor for the splice is going to be 30 feet, and the driving of the splice is going to be 10 feet. Cutoff, we never pay for cutoff, so always remember that that's 0 now in the as of 2012. So our total pay quantity is going to be everything combined, and that contractor is going to receive 235 linear feet payment of pile for all these events that took place for this pile. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, now on this one, we have a authorized pile length of 130 feet, and it's a production pile. So we have a 130-foot authorized, however, the contractor brought in a 120-foot pile instead, so we're not going to pay him 130, we're only going to pay him the 120. He preformed 60 feet, and we pay 30% of the value of what he preformed, which is going to be 18 feet. He had 2 set checks within 1 working day, so remember the first 2 are free, so that's 0. Redrive, we paid 0. Splice length, he had a 10-foot splice length because we needed that to reach the pile, so we would pay him for the splice length. But remember, he only brought in 120 feet, so we would pay him for furnishing that pile. Had he brought in a 130-foot pile, there would be no need to do any splice labor. So therefore, he gets no payment for splice labor or driving of the splice, and cutoff's always free. So our total payment for this pile would be 148 feet. Okay, so let's look at the next one. This one, we have a authorized length of 140 feet, and the contractor brought in 1 section at 120 and 1 at 20 feet. Well, that means that we're not going to pay for the splices thereof. So we're going to pay him his authorized 140 feet, which we're allowed to do. We didn't preform anything, so there'll be no payment. We had 2 set checks within 1 day, so the first 2 are free. Nothing for that. Redrive. We had a redrive in there, 1, and we're going to pay him 20 feet for that. The splice length, there's no payment for it because the authorized length was 140, and the 120 and 20 together equals the 140. Splice labor, nothing because he should have brought in a 140 pile. Driving of the splice, nothing. And 1 build-up. Whenever we build up, he gets a straight 9 feet. So the payment for this pile would be 169 feet total. All right, so let's move on to our next problem. And this one is the authorized length was 120, and the contractor delivered 130. Well, we didn't need that extra 10 feet. So we're only going to pay him the authorized 120. And he preformed, drilled a hole for 60 feet, and we're going to pay 30% of the pile linear feet for that, so it's 18. We had 2 set checks, first 2 are free, so that's 10 for the other remaining 1. Redrive, we had 0, so we don't pay anything, and we had 1 cutoff, never pay anything for cutoff, so the total quantity for this pile is 148 feet. All right, let's go on to the next one. In this one, the contractor brought out 120 feet. So we had actually 120 feet delivered, so we're going to pay him the 120 feet. No brainer there. Preforming, he didn't preform anything, so he doesn't get any payment. Set checks, he had 4 within 1 working day. Now look at the difference in this lot. This is not a production pile, it's a test pile. And on test piles, the first 4 are free. That's why there's no payment here. So then we have a redrive, 1, which we're going to pay 20 feet on the test pile. And then we have a cutoff, which is 1, and we never pay for anything on cutoff. So notice that the 120 feet, and even though we're 5 foot above cutoff, he still got paid for 120 feet. All right, let's move on to the next one. Here, the contractor brought out an 80-foot pile. He drove the pile and reached bearing by 75 feet, but we still pay the contractor for the 80 feet. So set checks, we had 4 set checks within 1 day. Steel pile, you're allowed 2 free within the first day, so we added another 2 set checks. So this is a production pile, so we give the contractor 10 feet for each additional set checks after the first one. That's why we have 20. And then we didn't redrive anything, so it's 0, and cutoff is 0. All right, let's move on to the final example problem. Here we have an authorized length of 80 feet. It's a steel production pile. So he delivered 2 at 40 each. So that's not our problem, but we are going to pay for 80. He preformed 20 feet. He drilled a hole for 20, so we're going to give him 30% of that, 6 feet. And the set checks, he had 3 within 1 working day. Now the contractor, we get 2 set checks for free, and within the 1 working day, we're going to give him 10 feet for that. Redrive, we don't pay anything for redrive because we didn't have any. Authorized splice length is 10 feet. Now that's above and beyond up in here. We drove the 80 and then we had to splice on another 10 to get the cutoff. So we'll pay him that 10 feet. And then we had 2 splices. Now for the 2 splices, the way that works is the contractor drove the pile. He did not reach bearing, so the engineer authorized a 10-foot splice, and he drove the splice and reached bearing. He cut off 1 foot from the top. The authorized splice is 10 foot, so we pay 10 foot. We also pay for material and labor for that splice, which is 20 feet. Now we don't pay for the driving of the splices or the steel piles. There's no pay for the contractor's convenience, which is down here, this other splice. Okay, so that's it. We're looking, this concludes the structures portion. We'll go over this in class, of course, so you've got some more information on it. And there are some key sheets that you can look at to see what the different types of pile and what the authorized payments are for them. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.